When the front door clicked shut, my whole world fractured. I stood in my sister's living room, listening to the taxi pull away with Brooke and Jared. They were supposedly off on a 5-day Caribbean anniversary cruise, sun, buffets, umbrella drinks, while I stayed behind to watch their daughter. I turned with a smile already forming, ready to ask Nola what she wanted to do first. Cookies? A movie? Maybe we'd curl up with a book the way we always did. I expected to see her reaching for her iPad, fingers flying over the screen so the text-to-speech app could talk for her. But she wasn't reaching for anything. She just stood there, staring at me with an intensity one had never seen in her 8 years of life. Then my niece, the child everyone believed was born mute, who hadn't made a single sound since toddlerhood, opened her mouth. "Auntie, don't drink the tea Mom made." She plotted something bad. Her voice was clear, smooth, like she'd been talking every day of her life. The blood in my veins went ice cold. Let me go back about 6 hours because to understand that moment, you have to understand how I ended up in my sister's kitchen with a thermos full of poison, and a niece who had just dropped the word plotted like she was a tiny crime novelist. My name is Lisa Raines. I'm 32, an accountant at a mid-size firm in Columbus, Ohio. I get excited about balanced ledgers and clean audit trails. My therapist says numbers make me feel safe and in control. I suspect she's right. That Saturday started quietly. Coffee. A clean apartment. No obligations. Then my phone rang. Brooke, my older sister, 6 years ahead of me and frequently a lifetime apart, had her honeyed voice on. That voice was always a warning sign. She only used it when she wanted something. "Lisa, I have the biggest favor to ask." She and Jared, she said, had booked a last-minute 5-day Caribbean cruise for their anniversary. Very romantic, very spur of the moment, and they needed someone to watch Nola. Of course I said yes. I always said yes to Brooke. And I meant it when I said I'd love the time with Nola. I adored that kid. Communicating through an iPad could be tiring, but there was something luminous about her. Those big, observing eyes that soaked up everything. When I read aloud to her, she'd lean into my shoulder and I could feel her unwind, like my voice was a safe room she could step into. According to Brooke, Nola had been born with a rare neurological condition that prevented speech. "We found out when she was 3, she'd always say sadly. Nothing they can do." I never doubted it. Why would I? She was my sister. Mothers know their children. Besides, I hadn't been around much when Nola was small. I'd taken a job in Chicago right after she was born, too good to pass up, and I only flew home for Christmas and the occasional long weekend. By the time Nola turned 3, she was already silent and Brooke's story was fully in place. 2 years ago, I moved back to Ohio when our mom, Patricia, got sick. Cancer, the slow, cruel kind. I wanted to be closer to help. During those months I started seeing Nola a lot more. Reading to her. Bringing her books. Just being there. Even without spoken words, we built something real. Our father, Harold, had died 3 years before Mom, heart disease. He'd been the quiet, steady type, always fixing things without complaint. When he was gone, it felt like the keel had been ripped out of our family. Mom hung on for a while after that. When she finally passed 14 months ago, she left a trust about $1.2 million. Their life savings. Dad's insurance. Everything. She structured it so that any major withdrawals required both Brooke's and my signatures. Classic mom, practical to the end. She also left me the family home, since Brooke already owned property. At the time it felt fair. Lately I've wondered if Mom saw something in Brooke I didn't. Anyway, that Saturday I drove to Brooke's house around noon. Her place is the sort of suburban dream you see on real estate brochures. Big lawn, tasteful stonework, perfectly trimmed hedges. Brooke opened the door and hugged me. Hugged me. My sister is not a hugger. 2 hugs in one day would later feel as subtle as a fire alarm. "You're a lifesaver, Lisa." "Truly," she cooed. She looked flawless as usual, hairstyled, manicure fresh, designer luggage lined up by the door. Jared was outside loading bags into the waiting taxi. He gave me a quick wave and a mumbled hello, eyes half on his phone, half on the pavement. Sweaty. Twitchy. But Jared always looked a little stressed, so I filed it under normal. Brooke walked me through the house like I'd never been there. "Here's the kitchen," she said. "Here's Nola's room. Here's the remote for the TV. Then she opened the refrigerator and pulled out a large thermos with a bright yellow lid. I made this for you, she said, pressing it into my hands. Herbal tea for stress. You look tired, Lisa. You've been working too hard. Something in the way she said it, too insistent, too staged, skimmed across my nerves. But I did what I always did with Brooke. I smiled. I thanked her. I didn't push. She'd been offering unwanted solutions my whole life. When I went through a breakup at 25, her cure-all was lavender oil, green juice, and a vision board plastered with George Clooney. Manifest your future husband, she'd said. I've been suspicious of vision boards ever since. The taxi honked. Brooke hugged me again, second time that day, a statistical anomaly, and rushed out. Jared trailed her with barely a glance. I watched the taxi pull away, shut the front door, turned around, and there was Nola, standing in the entryway like a sentry, staring at me like she was about to warn me the planet had 20 minutes to live. Auntie, don't drink the tea Mom made. She plotted something bad. Forgot how to breathe. The thermos suddenly felt like it weighed 50 pounds, like it might explode in my hands. The child I'd believed was physiologically unable to speak had just warned me, in perfectly articulated English, that my own sister had tried to drug me. I set the thermos on the counter very carefully like it was radioactive. My hands were shaking hard enough that the lid rattled. Then I turned back to Nola and sank to my knees so we were eye to eye. Nola, I whispered, my voice barely there. You can talk? She nodded. Those enormous eyes were frightened, but there was a steeliness in them too. I always could, Auntie, she said quietly. Mommy made me stop. The room tipped sideways. I put one hand flat on the floor to steady myself. What do you mean she made you stop? And my 8-year-old niece told me a story that took everything I thought I knew about my family and tore it into shreds. Nola had not been born mute. There was no irreversible neurological condition. That was a lie Brooke had sustained for 5 years. Until she was 3, Nola was like any other toddler. First words, then sentences. Songs, endless questions. I love you at bedtime. A house full of sound. Then one afternoon everything changed. She'd been playing in her room upstairs and got thirsty, so she padded down to the kitchen for juice. Brooke was on the phone, back turned, and didn't notice her small daughter in the doorway. Nola remembered words, most of them meaningless to a 3-year-old, but a few stuck. Aunt Lisa, money out of the picture. When Daddy's gone, then Mom. And then we get everything. She trusts me completely. She's so stupid. Nola didn't know what out of the picture meant, but she knew my name. And she understood the sharp, cruel way her mother said stupid. The next day, still innocent and confused, she asked, Mommy, what does out of the picture mean? Brooke's face went cold. She grabbed Nola's arms hard enough to leave bruises and knelt so their faces were inches apart. Listen to me very carefully, she said. If you ever speak again to anyone about anything, something terrible will happen to Aunt Lisa. Your voice is dangerous. Every word you say hurts her. If you love your auntie, you will never make another sound. Do you understand? Nola loved me. I was the aunt who brought picture books and sat on the floor and made silly voices. The one who looked at her like she was a miracle, not a problem. So, at 3 years old, she made a decision. She gave up her voice to protect me. I sat on Brooke's pristine kitchen floor sobbing while this child explained the choice she'd carried for 5 silent years, terrified that if she slipped, if she uttered a word, she'd somehow harm the person she loved most. Brooke, meanwhile, leveraged that fear. She took Nola to doctors, played the concerned mother, collected the diagnosis of selective mutism, but then told everyone else it was something neurological, congenital, hopeless. She hid the real records. By then I was in Chicago, dropping in twice a year. I had no reason to doubt her. From the floor I glanced up at the mantel. A glass plaque sat there engraved, Mother of the Year. She'd gotten it at the community center 2 years ago. People had applauded her patience and sacrifice for her special needs child. In that moment I wanted to hurl that plaque into the sun. What else do you know, sweetheart? I asked Nola quietly. What else have you seen? Being silent had made her invisible. Adults forgot she was there. They'd talk freely around her, assuming she didn't understand or couldn't repeat anything. She saw Brooke practice my signature on scrap paper, over and over. adjusting the loops until it almost matched. She heard late-night phone calls about the trust and moving everything over before Lisa figures it out. She watched her father grow more timid, more fearful of Brooke, nodding along to everything she said. She watched her mother perform for neighbors, teachers, church ladies, the picture of selfless devotion. And then 2 nights before today, Nola had heard something that finally broke her silence. She'd crept to the top of the stairs like she'd done 100 times. Her parents were in the kitchen. "The tea will make her sick enough for the ER," Brooke said. "Not dangerous, just severe stomach issues. Extreme drowsiness. She'll be out for days." "What about Nola while we're gone?" Jared asked. "Mrs. Patterson next door will take her. I already told her Lisa has episodes sometimes. She bought it. While Lisa's in the hospital, we drive to Indianapolis. There's a lawyer there who doesn't know her. I've got all the forged papers ready. We transfer the entire trust to my name. By the time Lisa's back on her feet, it's done. She'll never be able to prove anything. No cruise. No Caribbean. Just a carefully planned heist. Drug me. Forge my signature in another state. Empty the trust. My own sister." I pulled Nola into my arms and held her as tightly as I dared. This small, stubborn, astonishing child, who had bartered away her own voice for my safety, and then given it back at the moment it mattered most. "You saved me," I whispered into her hair. "You know that, right? You just saved my life." Her thin arms gripped my neck fiercely. "I couldn't let Mommy hurt you, Auntie. Not anymore." I looked at the thermos on the counter. Yellow lid. Homey, harmless. It might as well have been a smoking gun. The tears dried. Something cold and precise settled in my chest. Brooke thought she had 5 days to steal everything while I lay in a hospital bed. She was very, very wrong. The first person I called was Gwen Mercer. We'd met in college. She went into nursing, I went into accounting, but we'd stayed close. She was the sort of friend who showed up at your door with ice cream and the exact uncomfortable truth you didn't want to hear. I trusted her completely. She picked up on the second ring. "Lisa." "Gwen, I need you at Brooke's house. Now. I can't explain over the phone. Please." Something in my voice must have done the work. "On my way," she said and hung up. 40 minutes later, she was at the door in scrubs and a sloppy ponytail. One look at my face and she yanked me into a hug. "Talk," she said. So I did. The tea, the trust, the forged signatures. And Nola, silent for 5 years, speaking to warn me. When I finished, Gwen was very still. Then she looked over at Nola, perched on the couch with her knees to her chest, solemn as a judge. "You," Gwen said, kneeling in front of her, "are the bravest kid I have ever met." Nola almost smiled. Gwen stood, "All business. First that tea gets tested. I know someone at the hospital lab who can run it tonight. If there's anything in it, we'll know." She dug into her bag and produced a pair of latex gloves. Of course she had latex gloves, slid them on, and carefully poured some of the tea into a sterile container she also somehow had. "What kind of person poisons tea?" she muttered. "I always knew Brooke was off. Remember when she told you that haircut made your face look less round? That was not a compliment. That was psychological warfare with a flat iron." I almost laughed. "Okay," Gwen said, sealing the container. "What else do we have? If she's been doing this a while, there'll be more." I looked at Nola. "You said you know where Mommy keeps important papers?" She nodded and hopped off the couch. "In the office. In the locked drawer. I know the code." "How?" I asked. I watched her type it. Lots of times. A small bitter shrug. "Nobody notices the quiet kid." She led us to Brooke's immaculate home office, white desk, arranged bookshelves, tasteful art. One drawer had a digital keypad. 0315, Nola said. Their wedding day. Of course Brooke would pick something sentimental, and then brag to herself about how clever she was. I punched in the code. The drawer clicked open. Inside was a horror show. First, authorization forms from the bank bearing what was supposed to be my signature. It was close. Brooke had clearly practiced. But the capital L was off. The curve on the G in Rains was wrong. Anyone who knew my handwriting would spot it. Second, bank statements for the trust account. 14 months of activity. Regular withdrawals, always just under $15,000. Small enough to stay under the automatic reporting threshold. The total? About $180,000. Gone. Third, printed emails between Brooke and an Indianapolis attorney named Warren Ducker. They discussed an emergency transfer of trust assets due to my alleged mental instability, my supposed inability to manage finances. A meeting was set for day 4 of the cruise. Fourth, and this one gutted me, a folder titled Lisa Mental. Inside were dated pages in Brooke's handwriting, fabricated descriptions of my paranoid episodes, severe depression, irrational behavior. All lies. She'd been building a paper trail in case I ever challenged anything, ready to paint me as unhinged and unfit. My sister had planned to take my money and torch my reputation for good measure. Gwen photographed everything. Every page, every signature, every date. This is premeditated fraud, she said. Not an impulsive grab. She's been constructing this for over a year. The accountant in me was already sorting. Dates. Amounts. Patterns. Numbers don't have feelings. They just tell you the story, whether you like it or not. And these numbers told a very ugly one. An hour later, Gwen's phone buzzed. Her contact at the lab had rushed the test. The tea contained a strong laxative compound combined with a sedative herb. Non-lethal, but enough to leave someone violently ill and barely conscious for 2 to 3 days. Hospital-level sick. Exactly what Nola had heard. Brooke hadn't wanted a corpse. Just a sister too incapacitated to interfere. I thought about my emergency savings. $8000 I'd been squirreling away for years in a separate bank under the sensible label, walk-away money. A financial advisor had once told me everyone needed it. I'd taken the advice and never told my family. That account was now my war chest. I made one more call. Kevin Calloway. We'd been in the same study group in college. He'd gone on to law school and was now an assistant prosecutor in Franklin County. I laid everything out. The tea, the forged forms, the withdrawals, the Indianapolis lawyer, Nola's story. When I finished, Kevin was quiet. Lisa, he said finally, this is fraud, forgery, and attempted poisoning. And what she did to that kid. That's coercive control and psychological abuse. This is serious. What do I do? You let me handle the law. I'll talk to local police, then the FBI. This crosses state lines, so it's federal. We'll also contact this attorney in Indianapolis. He may have no idea what's going on. Or he might. Either way, we'll find out. And Brooke. She cannot know you're onto her, he said. If she thinks the plan is blown, she may run or hide the money she already moved. You need to make her believe everything is going exactly the way she wanted. My eyes went to the thermos still on the counter. I have to pretend I drank it. That's right. You're going to be very sick for the next few days. On paper. I can do that, I said. And I meant it. Day 2 I became an actress. I sat on Brooke's couch. Nola pressed against my side, watchful and quiet out of habit, though she no longer had to be. Gwen was across from us. I called Brooke. It went straight to voicemail, predictable if she was on a cruise. Brooke, I said, letting my voice shake. Something's really wrong. I've been sick all night, vomiting, dizzy, I can barely stand. I think I need to go to the hospital. Nola's okay. Mrs. Patterson can take her if I go to the ER. I'm so sorry to ruin your trip. I'll figure it out. I hung up with hands that were perfectly steady, heart that felt like a stone. Gwen gave me a thumbs up. Award-worthy, she said. The little quiver? Very convincing. Years of watching Brooke fake emotions, I said. I picked up a few tricks. 2 hours later my phone buzzed. Not with a call, a text. Oh no, crying face, feel better soon. Don't worry about Nola. Mrs. P is great with kids. Rest up and take care of yourself. See you in a few days, sparkling heart. I stared at the pink heart emoji for a long time. She had, in her mind, successfully poisoned me and was on her way to steal over $1 million. Her response had all the depth of a wrong number apology. She didn't even ask which hospital, Gwen said, reading over my shoulder. Didn't ask to talk to Nola. Didn't offer to come home. Nope, I said. Apparently even sociopaths text more convincingly than this. While Gwen's husband, who worked in IT, gave us an impromptu tutorial on social media tracking, we pulled up Jared's Instagram. He'd left location services on. His selfie from the previous morning was tagged at a coffee shop in Indianapolis. No blue water. No cruise ship. Just exactly where Nola said they'd be. While Gwen dug into their digital trail, I went back to the office drawer. Brooke was obsessive. There had to be more. At the bottom under old tax returns I found a bundle of letters. They were from Brooke to our mother, written during Mom's last months. My throat tightened as I read them. In those letters Brooke pleaded, no demanded, that Mom change the will. Leave everything to her. Cut me out completely. Lisa is single. She has no real responsibilities. I have a child to raise. I need this money. You always loved her more anyway. This is your chance to fix that. If you ever loved me, you'll do this. Manipulation. Guilt. A full court press on a woman dying of cancer. At the back of the bundle was a single letter in Mom's shaky handwriting. I will not punish Lisa for being responsible. I will not reward you for being greedy. The trust stays equal. This discussion is over. Do not bring it up again. I love you, but I am disappointed in who you've become. Mom, she'd seen through Brooke, even at the end. She refused to weaponize her own will. So Brooke waited. She let Mom die. Then she started forging. I sat on the polished office floor with that letter in my hands and cried. Not for myself, but for Mom, who'd gone to her grave knowing one of her daughters had turned into a stranger. Auntie. Nola stood in the doorway. Yes, honey. Are those letters from Grandma? Yes. I patted the floor beside me. She came and sat down, leaning against my arm. Grandma told me something once, she said. When Mommy wasn't in the room, she said, watch your mama, little one. Something's wrong in her heart. I thought she meant like a real heart problem. I didn't get it. I think Grandma knew, I said softly. She saw more than she said. Do you think she knew about me? That I could talk. I pictured Mom, sharp-eyed even when frail, watching Nola's too careful silence. Mom missed nothing. I think, I said slowly, that she trusted me to figure it out someday. And she trusted you to be brave when the time came. Nola squeezed my hand. That evening Kevin called back. The legal machine was already grinding into motion. Local police were fully briefed and, thanks to the tea and the financial records, were taking it seriously. The FBI had been looped in. Interstate wire fraud, moving money across state lines by deception, is their kind of party. As for Warren Ducker, the Indianapolis lawyer, he'd already been uneasy about the signatures. When investigators contacted him and laid out the situation, he agreed to cooperate. They planned a sting for day 4, the morning of Brooke's appointment. She would walk into that office to finalize her theft and find detectives instead. Your job, Kevin reminded me, is to keep up the act. Keep sending updates about how sick you are. She can't suspect a thing. So I did. Day 2 text. Still so sick. Doctor thinks maybe food poisoning. So weird. Nola is being great with Mrs. P. Don't worry, enjoy your trip. Day 3 text. Barely keeping water down. So weak. Please don't cut trip short. I'll be fine. Just need rest. Every message I picture Brooke reading it satisfied. My episodes perfectly fitting the narrative she'd laid out for Mrs. Patterson. That same day, Kevin arranged for Nola to give a formal statement to a child advocacy specialist. It had to be done properly, videotaped with a child psychologist present, following all the protocols for minor witnesses. Nola looked small in the interview chair, feet not reaching the floor. She was nervous. I could see it in the way her fingers twisted in her lap. But when the questions started, she straightened. She told them everything. The phone call at 3. The threats. The years of silence. Watching her mother forge my name. Hearing the plan about the tea. When it was over, she came out and looked at me through the glass. That's the most I've talked since I was 3, she said. My voice is tired. But it feels good. Like I was underwater for a long time and I finally came up. I wanted to rush in and scoop her up, but the professionals needed to finish. When they finally released her, I hugged her so hard I probably undid her metaphorical breath of fresh air. One more day, I told her. Just one more day, and this part is over. One more day, she echoed. Day 4. Indianapolis. 10:15 a.m. Ducker's office was on the third floor of a glass and brick building overlooking downtown. I wasn't there in person. Kevin set up a secure video link so I could watch from Brooke's living room. Nola sat on one side of me, Gwen on the other. We all watched the grainy lobby feed as Brooke and Jared walked in. Brooke looked like a magazine ad for responsible professional woman. Tailored dress, subtle jewelry, expression of mild concern carefully painted on. She carried a leather portfolio I recognized from her office, the same one that had held the forged documents. Jared looked like he might throw up. Sweat stained the collar of his nice shirt. His eyes bounced from wall to floor to receptionist and back again. They signed in, smiled, and were led to a conference room. Inside, 3 people waited. Ducker at the head of the table, serious and stone-faced, and 2 others in plain clothes, a man and a woman. Brooke stepped in, slowing slightly when she saw the extra bodies. "I thought this was a private meeting," she said, that syrupy tone back in place. "Please have a seat, Mrs. Whitford," Ducker said. "These are Detectives Morrison and Park. They have a few questions about your documentation." I watched the micro-expressions move across my sister's face. Confusion, then calculation, then the quick decision to bluff it out. She sat, crossed her legs, folded her hands. "Of course. Whatever you need. Is there some problem with the paperwork?" Detective Morrison, the woman, remained calm, almost pleasant. She asked Brooke to confirm her identity, her relationship to me, her status as co-trustee. Brooke answered smoothly, confident. She still thought she could talk her way through this. Then Morrison laid 2 documents side by side on the table, a forged authorization form and a verified sample of my real signature. "Mrs. Whitford," she said mildly, "can you explain why these signatures don't match?" For one fraction of a second, true panic flashed across Brooke's face. Then the mask slammed back into place. "My sister's handwriting is extremely inconsistent," she said. "She's always been like that. And frankly, she's not well. Mentally. I have documentation about her instability. I can show you," Detective Park cut in. "We've reviewed your documentation. The notes about her supposed mental health issues." He slid a small stack of papers forward. "Here's the thing. Her employer describes her as exceptionally reliable and detail-oriented. Her physician says she's in excellent mental and physical health. 3 colleagues gave statements calling her steady, meticulous, and remarkably stable." The mask cracked a little more. "They don't see her like I do," Brooke said, pushing a tremor into her voice. "Family knows the truth." "Family does," Morrison replied, voice gentle but edged. "Speaking of truth, we have records of $180,000 in unauthorized withdrawals from the trust over the last 14 months. Always just under the reporting threshold. We have your email exchanges with this office. We have forensic handwriting analysis confirming the signature on the withdrawal forms is not your sister's." She placed another document on the table. "And we have lab results from the tea you prepared for her." Jared made a noise like someone had punched the air out of him. "The tea contained a strong sedative and a powerful laxative," Morrison went on. "Enough to put someone in the hospital for several days." On our screen I saw Brooke go very, very still. Then Morrison took out a tablet. "There's one more thing we'd like you to hear." She tapped the screen. A child's voice played through the speakers. "My mommy told me when I was 3 that if I ever talked again, something bad would happen to Aunt Lisa. She said my voice was dangerous, that every word would hurt her. So I stopped talking for 5 years to protect my aunt." Nola's recorded statement continued, clear, measured. The overheard phone call. The threats. The plan about the tea. "I couldn't let Mommy hurt Auntie Lisa," her little voice said. "She's the only one who ever really saw me. Even when I couldn't talk, she listened." When it ended, the conference room was silent. "That's not, she can't, she's mute," Brooke sputtered. "She's been mute since she was 3. She cannot talk. This is fake." "You just confirmed you believe your daughter cannot speak," Morrison said quietly. "But according to her real medical records, the ones you didn't show your family, Nola was diagnosed with selective mutism. That's a psychological condition, often caused by trauma or fear, not a structural inability to talk." She let that hang in the air. Your child stopped speaking because you terrorized her into silence, Mrs. Whitford. For 5 years. That's child psychological abuse, on top of fraud, forgery, and attempted poisoning. The facade didn't just crack then. It shattered. Brooke's face twisted into something raw and vicious. She was supposed to stay quiet, she hissed. She was never supposed to. Brooke, Jared burst out, voice shaking. Stop talking. Just stop. He turned to the detectives. I want a lawyer. My own lawyer. I'll cooperate. I'll tell you everything. She planned it all. The signatures. The transfers. The tea. I was scared of her. I'll testify. Whatever you want. Brooke whipped around on him with such fury that even on the screen it was frightening. You spineless coward. After everything I did for us. Mrs. Whitford, Detective Park said, rising. You're under arrest. Stand up and place your hands behind your back. The cuffs clicked shut. She kept talking, arguing, minimizing, blaming, but nobody in that room was listening. They'd seen the documents. They'd heard her daughter. The story was done. They walked Brooke out of the conference room, through the lobby, and into a waiting police car. On the couch, I watched the woman who'd spent her whole life playing the golden child and perfect mother vanish into the back of a cruiser. Beside me, Nola's fingers tightened around mine. It's over, she whispered. Yes, I said. It's over. Gwen exhaled loudly. I'm guessing the community center is going to want that Mother of the Year plaque back, she said. Think they'll forward it to her new address in prison? My mouth twitched. It wasn't quite laughter. Not yet. Justice was in motion. But I had one more thing to do. 2 weeks later, I sat in a small worn-out Franklin County family courtroom. Nothing like television, no dark wood paneling, no soaring ceilings. Just fluorescent lights, scuffed floors, uncomfortable chairs, and a judge's bench that had seen more broken families than I could imagine. Today, though, something was being repaired. I wore my best professional suit, the one I usually save for high-stakes client meetings. This felt higher. Next to me, at the petitioner's table, sat Nola. She'd chosen her own dress. Purple, her favorite color. She'd insisted on brushing her hair herself. Her foot bounced under the table, but she wasn't silent anymore. The judge, an older man with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, flipped through the file in front of him. Brooke's arrest. The fraud charges. The forged documents. The lab report on the tea. The psychologist's report on 5 years of emotional abuse. Jared had signed away his parental rights in exchange for a deal with prosecutors. He'd known he'd done nothing, and deep down he understood he didn't deserve to be anyone's father. I've reviewed the emergency custody petition, the judge said. Given the circumstances, the criminal charges against the mother, the father's relinquishment of rights, the extensive evidence of psychological harm, I'm prepared to rule. Then, instead of looking at me, he looked directly at Nola. Young lady, he said. I understand you've recently started speaking again after a long time. That took a lot of courage. Nola nodded, fingers gripping mine so tightly my hand tingled. I'd like to ask you something, he continued. In your own words, where would you like to live? Nola looked at him, then at me, then back. Then she stood up, small and steady in her purple dress. I want to live with my Aunt Lisa, she said. Her voice rang clearly through the room. She's the only one who ever really saw me. Even when I couldn't talk, she listened. She read to me. She sat with me. She never made me feel like something was wrong with me. She paused, then added, perfectly serious. Also, she makes really good pancakes. A soft ripple of laughter went through the courtroom. Even the judge smiled. Well, he said, signing the document in front of him. I think that's as clear as it gets. Emergency custody is granted to Ms. Lisa Raines. Walking out of the courthouse, I couldn't stop watching Nola. Her mouth, quiet for 5 years, barely stopped moving. She chattered about the judge's glasses, about the bailiff's weird tie, about what she wanted for lunch, about a pigeon she'd seen outside the window, about whether we could get a dog. 5 years of swallowed words. Now they tumbled out. I had no intention of ever asking her to hold a single one back. That evening we ate dinner in my apartment, our apartment now. I'd already started transforming the spare room into her space. Purple walls by request. Bookshelves from floor to ceiling. a little reading nook by the window. "Aunt Lisa?" she asked through a mouthful of pasta. "Yeah, honey. Can I tell you about dinosaurs?" "I would be honored," I said. What followed was a 25-minute seminar on dinosaur combat logistics. According to Nola, velociraptors are overrated because of movies. Rex benefits from media bias, and the real champion would be the ankylosaurus, because it's basically a walking tank with a mace on its tail. I nodded gravely through all of it. I didn't need to fully grasp Jurassic battle strategy. I just needed to listen. Nola started therapy the following week with a specialist in childhood trauma. It wasn't magic. 5 years of fear don't evaporate because a judge signs a form. There were hard days. Sometimes something would trigger her and she'd go very quiet again, or wake up from nightmares shaking. But there were more good days. Days with unrestrained laughter. Days I heard her singing badly but enthusiastically in the shower. Days she came home from school buzzing with stories about new friends who had never known her as the mute girl. To them, she was just Nola. Brooke faced a pile of felony charges. The evidence was crushing. To avoid trial, she took a plea. I didn't attend the hearings. I had better uses for my time. The trust was frozen and audited. Most of the stolen $180,000 was tracked and returned. I was appointed sole trustee responsible for managing it. Carefully. For us. I sold the family home. Too many ghosts in those walls. I used part of the proceeds to set up an education fund for Nola and tucked the rest away. Walk-away money multiplied. Sometimes I thought about my mother, Patricia, with her unwavering practicality and sharp intuition. About that final letter to Brooke, refusing to reward greed. About the warning she'd whispered to her granddaughter. Something's wrong in her heart. Mom had seen her eldest daughter clearly, and even in death, she protected the ones who needed it most. I like to believe she'd be proud of what came next. One cool Saturday morning, Nola and I sat on my tiny balcony with pancakes and orange juice in front of us and early autumn sunlight on our faces. Nola held court, telling me about a dream she'd had. A penguin that drove a car, a castle made entirely of waffles, and a very polite dragon named Gerald who apologized every time he accidentally set something on fire. It made absolutely no sense. It was perfect. I sipped my coffee and listened. Really listened. This, I thought, is what family is supposed to sound like. Not silence maintained by fear. Not lies and manipulation and invisible bruises. Just this. A kid rambling about waffle castles, morning light through the trees, two people who chose each other. In the middle of her story, Nola stopped and looked at me. "Aunt Lisa," she said softly, "thank you for listening. For real listening. Even when I couldn't talk." I reached for her hand and squeezed it. "Always, sweetheart," I said. "Always. Sometimes the quietest people aren't weak at all. They're just waiting for someone they can finally trust with their voice." Nola found hers. And in the wreckage my sister left behind, I found my family. Some stories really do have happy endings. Ours was only just beginning.